Hey. Time for another Out of This World story from rSpace. Funny how life works, isn't it? You can spend decades scrubbing yourself clean, playing by the rules, avoiding trouble like it's radioactive, and then someone else comes along and flips the board. Today on rSpace, your fate isn't yours alone to control. Work background check revealed wife's affair and criminal record. I saved my career and ruined her life. Me and my wife Sarah, 35 male and 33 female, have been married for 7 years. We have a nice house, a dog, and a 4-year-old son. We've got a comfortable life that's mostly paid for by my job. I can't get into too much detail about what I do. It's not like I'm a secret agent or a top government official or something, but I'm just trying to limit the amount of identifying details I provide here. I'm already in hot water with my job, and they wouldn't like me sharing this. All I can really share is that I'm a senior employee with a firm that handles government contracts. It's important work, and it deals with a lot of sensitive information. So they take security very seriously. Before I could get the security clearance to start working there, they went over my life with a fine-tooth comb, and our record has to stay clean. They're constantly monitoring criminal records and reinvestigating us to make sure we haven't picked up a drug problem or started getting in bed with Chinese spies or anything. They look into finances, contacts, travel history, and even spouses. I was never worried about anything going wrong, as I kept as clean as possible. I had no vices, no unsavory friends, and didn't go near anything even remotely against the law. I'd never even gotten a traffic ticket. The last thing I expected was that my wife would be the one to put my job and career in danger. Without going into too much detail about how our company's security situation works, I'll just say that they have a security compliance department that handles the continuous checks. When I was called in to meet with them, I knew something was wrong. They didn't tell me why I was being called in. I just got a short email telling me to drop by security compliance as soon as possible. It was ominous enough to put a knot in my stomach. I can't go into too many particulars, but it wasn't a comfortable experience. There were 2 no-nonsense guys waiting for me in there. They stared at me like they were trying to read my soul. It was enough to make me nervous. But I knew that was the point. They just wanted to unsettle me so it would be easier to get me to talk. Besides, I knew I hadn't done anything. It was probably just a misunderstanding. Maybe some punk had stolen my identity and bought some questionable items in my name. Whatever it was, we could clear it up. They let me sit there in silence for a while, probably part of their technique, before they finally spoke to me. They asked if there was anything I wanted to disclose about my wife. I was so surprised that I nearly lost my composure. I expected questions about my drug habits, recent purchases, or new acquaintances. Mentioning my wife took me completely off guard. I just managed to say that I'd already disclosed everything of importance. That was when they dropped the bomb on me. They told me that the system had flagged me because of a change in my wife's criminal record. I looked at them like they were speaking in another language. My wife? A criminal record? I told them that she'd never even been arrested before. She'd never even been to a police station before. One of them had nodded like he expected that answer. Then he told me I was wrong and that she'd been arrested a few days before. The funny thing is that the news didn't shock me. I didn't believe it even a little, so I just thought he had his facts mixed up. There was no way my wife could have been arrested without me finding out. He went on to explain that she was bailed out as soon as possible, which is why she didn't spend the night in jail. Since she decided not to tell me about it, there was no way I would have found out. And it's not like the police notify spouses when their significant other is arrested. I didn't believe them, but I knew they wouldn't drag me in there if they weren't sure. I said I was sure there was some kind of misunderstanding going on. I told them that there was no way they were talking about my wife. It was probably someone with the same name. One of the guys shook his head and insisted there hadn't been a mix-up. He even showed me a document with her picture in it. I was too confused to be mad at her or worried about my job. I just wanted to find out what had happened. I was still holding out hope that there was some sort of logical explanation for everything. There was, but I didn't like it. They gave me more details. She'd been caught engaging in lewd conduct in a parked car. She and the man she'd been with were both arrested. The only reason they didn't end up with serious charges was because they'd been caught by the officer before someone could actually report them. Now I was in shock. This was all a lot to hear back to back. My wife had been arrested making out or having sex in a car with another man. I didn't know exactly what they'd done together, and I definitely wasn't going to ask these guys. If it was true, then it didn't matter if they'd just been rubbing each other's backs. Either way, it meant my wife was cheating on me. They gave me a moment to absorb the info before they moved on. Normally, they wouldn't have bothered me with a minor crime, but they were concerned because of the man she was arrested with. He had a criminal record, and it was serious enough to raise concern. He'd been arrested for fraud and various financial crimes. He claimed he was an honest man now, but every criminal says that before their next arrest. He wasn't the type of person that a company like mine would like to see connected to their employees, and as far as the firm was concerned, we had a connection through my wife. They started asking questions, trying to determine whether I knew him or had met him before. I assured them that I'd never heard of him before their conversation. They seemed to believe me right away, probably because I was visibly upset by the revelation. But the issue wasn't guilt. They were worried about who I could be exposed to. They told me my security clearance was under review, effective immediately. I wasn't fired, but I was pulled from sensitive projects until everything was resolved. I was more or less suspended. I left the room feeling numb. A lot had happened, and it all came out of nowhere. I think my brain simply didn't know how to process all of it. It was too much to take in. I don't remember driving home. I just remember realizing that I was in my car in the driveway, staring at the steering wheel. The engine was still running. I went inside to try to gather myself before she got back. I wanted nothing more than to talk to her and discover the truth. I wanted her to laugh and tell me it was all a misunderstanding. But I knew the truth. If she was really guilty, she'd never admit it. I needed to discover what really happened on my own. I didn't waste any time getting in touch with a private investigator. I wanted to verify her arrest and find out as much as I could about the other man. I wasn't going to give her a chance to lie to me. I explained the situation to the investigator carefully, without mentioning my employer by name. He understood my urgency and promised to prioritize my case. That attracted a rush fee, but I didn't mind. Money wasn't the issue here. He said the arrest was easy enough to verify, and it wouldn't take long for him to get info on the other guy. While he was working on that, I had to pretend everything was normal. I didn't mention the incident at work, or the fact that I was effectively suspended until the investigation was over. There was no way to tell her any of that without bringing up the fact that I knew about her and her affair. So I acted like I had had a completely uneventful day. It wasn't hard. She didn't have a reason to be suspicious of me. As far as she knew, she was completely in the clear, and there was no way I was going to find out. Playing dumb wasn't too difficult. The hardest part was pretending that I was still going to work. I just left the house and spent some time at a cafe that was out of the way. I spent that time catching up on my reading at first, but that changed when the PI texted me to tell me that he had some information. I was impressed with how fast he was. He was definitely worth every dollar. I met up with him that afternoon in his office. He was an older guy who looked exactly how you'd expect a private investigator to look. Like an ex-detective who'd seen a lot in his time. He was direct, too, which I also assumed he picked up from his past. He didn't waste any time getting into the details, which I appreciated. He shook my hand, and before he even sat down, he started telling me what he'd uncovered. First, he confirmed the arrest. He told me the details matched up with what I'd heard at the meeting. It happened exactly the way they described it. He didn't have a copy of the incident report yet, but he had a trusted source in the department who confirmed it for him. Obviously, hearing it from a source who wouldn't hold up in court when it came to that, but he promised me he'd have the documents ready by then. He didn't have photo evidence of the affair, but he was still certain there was infidelity going on. According to this source, she was performing a sex act on the other man in the car when a patrol officer found them. They were arrested and charged with public lewdness and released the same night. Of course, she hadn't mentioned any of that to me. And that brings us to her partner in crime, Tony. The details matched up with what security had told me. He'd been charged for different financial crimes on multiple occasions. I understood why my employer was so antsy about the whole situation. The PI said he was bad news for my security clearance review. I might not know him directly, but his close personal relationship with my spouse and the nature of his crimes was enough for them to be concerned that he could exert influence on her. Basically, my wife is cheating on me, and there's a good chance that I might lose my career because of her. My next move is a no-brainer: divorce. My PI had assured me that I'll have copies of the necessary documents soon. In the meantime, I've already started talking to a divorce lawyer. I have a lot of assets to protect, as well as a son to take care of, and I'll be danged if I let her take more than she deserves. You spent 7 years building what you thought was a solid life. Nice house, kid, dog, career carefully scrubbed clean, so not even a speeding ticket could haunt you. Every choice you made was calculated, every step measured, all in the hopes that nothing could touch the life you built. And then one day, your wife fudges up royally, just like that. One misstep, one wild backseat adventure, and suddenly your spotless career, your security clearance, your hard-earned stability, everything you carefully constructed is hanging by a thread. It's almost impressive in a horrifying kind of way. Update. My first post blew up in a way I didn't expect. Lots of people were convinced I was going to lose my job because of it. I was never worried about that happening. I intentionally kept some details vague and omitted anything identifying. This is a fresh throwaway account, and I never even gave any hints about what I do. I'm confident my company can't be identified, and that's all they care about. and obviously all names here are changed. I got to work right away with the advice my lawyer gave me. We went back to my company and disclosed everything before they came to me again. I needed to demonstrate that I was on their side. I informed them that I'd independently verified the arrest and confirmed the identity of the man involved, and that I'd retained legal counsel. I made it very clear that I had no prior knowledge of Tony, and that I was not involved with him in any way. They didn't interrupt me while I spoke. They just took notes and asked some clarifying questions when I was done. They mostly just wanted timelines. They wanted to know when I hired the PI, when I met him, and when I planned to confront her. They asked whether I was still living with Sarah. I explained that I was for the moment, but only because my lawyer had advised me not to make any sudden moves. The cooperation seemed to make the difference. They informed me that they would still need to carry out the investigation, just a formality, but my transparency was appreciated and would be taken into consideration. Basically, it sounded like they were telling me that I had nothing to worry about. That was a relief, but my career was only one of my problems. My relationship was a whole other mess to deal with. I went home that night knowing that I wouldn't be able to keep up the act much longer. Every interaction with Sarah drained me. She talked about our son, errands, and dinner plans while I was sitting on information that had put an end to our marriage. I wanted to end the charade and tell her that it was all over, but I couldn't do it yet. My lawyer was very firm on that point. Don't show your hand until you're ready to act. A few days later, the PI delivered the documents. Now I had proof of both of their records, dates, times, locations, the nature of their offense, and the fact that they were arrested together. The documents were important to me for so many reasons. First, it just felt reassuring to have hard evidence in my hands. She couldn't lie or sweet-talk her way past official paperwork. It also helped my chances in the upcoming custody battle. My lawyer made sure to prepare me for the harsh reality of divorce. There was a good chance that she was going to end up with primary custody on my son. Showing proof of her infidelity and her association with a known criminal was my best chance at beating at that. Even then, I would be lucky to get 50-50 custody. With the documents ready and the paperwork filed, I was ready. I confronted her after my son had gone to bed. I didn't yell or accuse her. I didn't want to wake up my son, but I'd already had enough time to deal with my feelings. I was still mad at her, but the anger was just under the surface. I was mostly just exhausted and wanted to put an end to all of this. I sat her down, put the arrest paperwork on the table between us, and asked her to explain it. I watched her face closely. She went from confusion to shock when she realized what it was. Then she stuttered while she tried to figure out what to say. She tried denial at first, saying, "I don't know what this is," before cutting herself off. I'm sure she realized there was no point in that. This paperwork came straight from the government. There was no mix-up she could have blamed it on. She still found a way, though. First she said she was sorry that she kept it a secret from me, but she knew I wouldn't understand. "It was all a misunderstanding. The cop didn't know what he saw." I stayed quiet and listened. She claimed she was sitting in the car with a coworker after going for a late lunch. The cop found them in the car together and got the wrong impression. I just stared at her. It was such a weak lie that I wasn't convinced for a second. I asked her why she wouldn't come to me if a cop had really fabricated a charge against her. If she was really telling the truth, then we'd both be fighting in court together, rather than her keeping it a secret from me. She claimed she'd been planning to tell me about it eventually, but she just didn't know how. I rubbed my temple and asked her if she wanted to see the body cam footage. She went completely pale and didn't say a word. I don't actually have it, but she didn't call my bluff. Her reaction was enough to confirm that she was lying. I made a mental note to ask the PI if there was actually any body cam footage of the arrest, in case she tried to pull that lie again in court. I wanted to hear her admit it, so I told her this was her last chance to be honest with me. She closed her eyes for a few moments before she started talking. She admitted that her story was a lie. Tony wasn't a coworker, he was someone she'd met online. She confessed that the report was accurate, but she claimed it was their first time ever doing anything physical together. I told her bluntly that I didn't believe her, and I didn't care. Whether it was the first or the 100th time, it didn't make a difference. The damage was done. That's when the tears started. I think she'd been under the idea that I was just going to ask her about the affair, and things would go back to normal. Now she was starting to realize that I was done with her. She said she was sorry, and that she'd only gone to Tony because he made her feel seen when she was lonely. I didn't argue. I just let her talk herself out, and when she was done, I told her that I'd already filed for divorce. That sent her into a panic. She said I was being extreme. She asked me to think of what it would do to our son. I said she should have thought of that before she started her affair. Then I revealed the damage she'd done to my career. I told her everything, from how her arrest had flagged an alert, to how I hired a PI to verify the facts. She accused me of choosing my job over her. She said it was illegal for them to force me to get a divorce to quit my job. I told her that wasn't what was happening here. They'd never told me to divorce her. Frankly, they were mostly just concerned about Tony. My job had very little to do with my decision. I still would have divorced her if I'd found out the affair through a fortune cookie. Because of her actions, I was fighting to save my career and to protect my son from whatever shady individuals she might expose him to while she was chasing cheap romance. There was no bargaining or fixing this. The solution was for us to end things. She went back and forth between the guilt and anger. I fought to keep my voice level so it wouldn't devolve into a shouting match. The last thing I wanted was for my son to wake up and witness this mess. I moved into the guest room that night. The next few weeks were unpleasant, but it beat pretending to still be in love with her. I followed my lawyer's directions as closely as possible. I documented everything and interacted with her as little as possible. I tried to limit our communication to texting as much as possible, and I only spoke with her concerning the home, our son, and the divorce. She did her best to try to get me to open up again, but I was a wall. Her criminal case wrapped up shortly after. It was open and shut. It turns out there was a body cam footage, and it was impossible to deny what was going on. I could only bring myself to watch it once. She took a plea deal, no jail time, but she had to pay a fine and was put on probation and had to complete mandatory counseling, and it was on her record forever now. My employer finished their review. I was cleared and returned to full duty. No marks on file. Off the record, I was told that the decisive factor was the fact that I had committed myself to full transparency after the incident. It was clear that I had no knowledge of her arrest or the affair, but I showed that I could still be trusted in how I pursued the truth and volunteered information to them. That was what mattered most to them, no mention of my divorce. Speaking of the divorce, it was short but ugly. She pushed for primary custody, but there was too much stacked against her. A criminal record, an affair, and a history of lying made her seem like a poor option. The judge didn't care much about infidelity when it came to deciding custody, but judgment and honesty were important, and she'd shown herself not to have much of that. We settled on joint custody with a structured schedule and firm boundaries. There were to be no overnights with new partners, and no contact between our son and Tony, ever. She claimed he wasn't in her life anymore, but I insisted on that clause. It was non-negotiable. I didn't go no contact with her. I wish I could have, but we were co-parents now. Instead, I had us both install a co-parenting app with a chat feature and a shared calendar that we could both update. I made sure all communication with her went through that app. That way, we only ever talked when it had to do with our son. She tried to text me a few times I was out of the app, but I completely ignored those. She kept telling me that she really wanted to talk to me. I didn't give her the chance until she came to drop off our son one afternoon. She stood in the doorway and said I needed to listen to her. I didn't shut the door on her, but I didn't show much interest either. She said people were being weird. Her friends weren't returning calls, and someone she thought was close to her had stopped replying altogether. She asked if I'd told everyone what had happened. It was less of a question. She said it more like she was certain. She was right, and I told her that. She'd already shown that she was ready to be dishonest at every turn. I couldn't give her the chance to paint events her own way, so I'd gone ahead to tell important people exactly what had happened. I didn't embellish anything. The details were enough. I mentioned the affair, her arrest, and how she'd hidden it from me. I even mentioned that the man involved had a criminal record that triggered a security review at my job. I was divorcing her to protect my son and my career. That was it. I didn't ask anyone to take sides or cut ties with her. I didn't even mention how angry I was. I stuck to the facts and people reacted on their own. She told me nobody confronted her, but they didn't treat her the same anymore. I wasn't surprised. Married women, like most of her friends, don't trust cheating women because they're worried about them coming after their husbands. It made sense that they all dropped her like she was contagious. She said she understood why I did it. She didn't seem upset. She sounded like she accepted how things turned out, like she moved past the emotional stage a while ago. She realized that she'd made a mistake. Tony disappeared when she needed support the most. She'd blown up her life for someone who couldn't stick around when she needed help. She asked if I ever thought of trying again. I told her no. I didn't say it angrily. I just sighed it out to show her that I was already tired of this line of discussion. I told her we could co-parent peacefully, but it didn't mean I trusted her enough to ever get back together. I told her my life was better now. My career was stable again, and her son was adjusting to his new reality. I wasn't going to upend everything out of pity for her. She sighed and tears formed in her eyes, but she didn't cry. She said she understood, then turned around and left. All of our interactions stayed purely casual after that. She stopped trying to talk with me outside of the co-parenting app, and we only ever talked about our son. She got the message. I wasn't about to forget everything she'd done to me just because she was feeling lonely. The boundaries I put in place between me and her might seem cruel, but they were there for a reason, to protect me and my son. She almost ruined our lives once, and I'm not going to let her do it again. You've just lived through the ultimate lesson in how fragile normal life really is. One careless choice from someone who you trusted, one backseat fiasco, and suddenly your world turns upside down. Not only did she betray you, she tried to drag your career and family down with her. And the kicker? She thought she could get away with it. While she's crying over the mess she made, you've got your career intact, custody structured to protect your son, and zero illusions about ever trusting her again. She gambled, and you called her bluff, and we're here for it. If you found out your spouse had been having an affair that could jeopardize your career, what would you do? Do you have a similar story? Share it with us in the comments below. And thank you for joining us today on rSpace. Be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on our next video. See you next time.